Welcome to toy-polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now I'm sure the Empire at the end of the Battle of Endor had a similar problem to one that I have here at toy-polloi, and that is a mass of bits of speeder bikes. Now every time I buy a sort of job lot of figures or a job lot of bits, I seem to get another piece of a speeder bike, and I've just ended up with this whole bag of them and none of them are complete. So I thought today I'd try and sort of rebuild and fix as many as I could. Now some of these have issues and some of them don't. A lot of the bits are very easy to find, like this back section for a speeder bike. This is probably one of the most common things that I sort of pick up. Normally the gun part is missing, but actually this one does have a gun part, and occasionally you see a little sort of few broken areas on it, like this latch bit is broken or this clip bit is broken, or maybe every once in a while the little bit that holds the flaps on is broken. But really they are always like this and they're pretty straightforward to find. Likewise all the other bits you find fairly easily, but it's the small pieces that are missing, like the handlebars, like the gun, and especially the flaps. So I think what I'm going to do today first is to rummage through this pile of ships and see which ones are nearest to being complete, and then we'll work out how we can go about fixing them. And there are a few areas that I can fix and I will be showing you, because a lot of people ask me how to actually get this part apart, so I will show you how to do that. But first off, let's sort through this pile and we'll work out what we can fix. So here we go, this is all the bits sorted out a little bit more sensibly, so I can work out what's going on. For the front parts of the speeder bikes I have 4 complete front parts, although one of them looks like it's made out of 2 different versions. You can see the bottom fins on that are a slightly different colour, so I'd say there's 3 definitely good ones and then 1 sort of average one there. And then I have the remains of 4 fronts of the sort of bike with no fins on them, so those are just going to go in a spares pile, and I might find parts for those in the future. Then we have 5 good back sections. These are all sort of relatively reasonable shape. A couple of them are a bit sun damaged. You can see that one's a little bit sun damaged. I'm going to put that one to one side. That one doesn't look too bad. The legs are slightly bent, but I think most of it is fine, so we'll leave that one as a good one. And then that's another reasonably good selection there of a bike. That one looks pretty good, and that's the only one that actually has a gun on it, so that's the most complete. So I've got 4 back sections, 4 front sections. Then these are other parts of bikes that all have bits broken in different ways. Now this one is missing the back metal plate, and one of the little latches that the flaps hold onto is snapped off, and it looks like the other parts are reasonable on that one. So I'm going to use that one as a sort of a test case, and I'll show you how to split open these bikes. I've got another one here which doesn't look in too bad condition, although it has been crunched on the side. You can see there's quite a bad stress mark there. So that's actually a reasonable one and might be useful for something. And then we have a couple more. This has another very common problem, which is the sort of the ejector mechanism there has snapped off, but everything else on that bike is fine. So it might be that we could join those 2 together and make one good one. So I think that might be what we'll do with those 2. And then we have another one here which has 2 bits broken. So this is missing the launching little mechanism, and also one of the little tabs that the flaps hold onto that is missing on the back. So that one doesn't really have many useful parts. I will keep it, but it's not really useful for today's purposes. And then we have the top sections. I have one here with no handlebars, but it's in good condition. I have one here with 1 handlebar. I've got another one here with 2 handlebars. That's the only full set of handlebars I've got. And then I have one here where it's got no handlebars, and one of the little tabs is snapped off on the side. So I will show you how to repair that as well, because I think these are all quite good fixes that can be shown. And I'm also thinking, as I've got so many of these bikes, I'm going to do a custom project as well. So I'm going to make some custom stickers for them. So let's start off by working out how to split these 2 apart and make one good back section from these 2 busted ones. So here we have two broken back sections of the bike. This one has probably the most common thing I see, which is the launching mechanism has snapped off. The actual hook is in reasonable shape, that's not too bad, but without that launching mechanism you can't actually clip the bikes together. And then we have this one here where the launching mechanism is there and in place, but it's missing the metal section at the back, and also one of the little tabs that the flaps hold onto is broken. So what we're going to do is take out the launching mechanism from this one and fit it into this one. Now this is not something I do particularly often, as you can see I find getting these back sections particularly easy. They're always sort of coming in job lots that I buy, so I don't really do this often, but I do get asked often how to take these apart, and it's not the easiest of things to do, but you can do it. It just takes a little bit of brute force and a knife. What you've got to do is get your knife and you insert it into this top section here and sort of move it down the join and then start twisting it. There is a peg at this top section that you want to sort of cut through. Be careful with your hands, you don't want to cut anything, and then just start slowly twisting and you'll hear it crack at some point. Let me turn this around, then I've got a slight start in there. There you go, and that is now cracked apart. It's just held together by plastic pegs that sort of go across. There's only a few of them, so once you've twisted it a bit you can then take the bottom plate out. Just going to push that in there and twist a bit. So you can take this bottom plate off, and that makes it a lot easier because you can then get your knife all the way down the body and start twisting it. And then there is one further sort of really sort of well put in peg about this point here. So you just put your knife in and start twisting. You might have to cut a little bit. So I say it's not the easiest of things to do, but you can get them apart. There you go, twisted that, and now that has split the bike apart. It feels a bit brutal, and it is a bit brutal, but that is the only way to do it. And you can now take the sides off this bike like so, and you're into the midsection. When you put this back together, you can see there are the two pegs that I've broken. You will have to glue it back together, but you now have access to all of this middle part of the bike. And you can see here, this is the launching mechanism, and that's the bit that has snapped. So we'll get this other bike split apart, and we can take the good parts from this one and put them in this one. I've now got both bikes split apart, so you can see here this is the other bike, and this is the one where the little tab was broken off that holds the flap in place. So actually this whole side is not of any use to me apart from the launching mechanism, so we can just pull that off of there. Now I could unhook all of this, but it actually looks like that launching mechanism is in slightly better shape maybe than the one that's in this broken one. We'll just have a look and see. Let's pull that out. It seems a little bit stickier to get out. Let's unhook it. Oh, I don't know why that doesn't want to come out. There we go. It's just a little bit sticky. So that's the back sort of hook. Well, maybe it's worth taking this one. This is certainly the better one. So we just unhook that, and we can hook that back on there. So there you go, that's the back section of the other one, and the little hook. I think that's probably the best combination of those two. So we can plop this back onto the good side of the bike, like so. That's the locking mechanism in place, and then we just have to put everything back together. So I'm going to take the best sides again. I think the two sides that we've got, both are in this pretty much the same condition. There's a slight stress mark on that one, a slight stress mark on that one, so I don't think it really matters which one I take. I'll take that one. We can just push these two pieces back together, and you can start to see how simple it is to work on these bikes. Cracking them apart feels quite vicious, but actually it does seem to sort of go pretty easily, and I've never had one break. And you can see here that that's actually holding together reasonably well, so I may not even have to put glue on that. I haven't put this front portion on, but you can see because these are split apart you can easily work on them. So let's choose the best of the front portions. I think that one is better, least damaged. So we'll hook that in place and close that up around it. And then it's just the little metal section at the back. Now the metal section does actually clip in place. You can actually take these off with the bike fully together, just using a little bit of sort of brute force again. So we just have to slide this in and down, it will clip in place. And there's the bike back section back together. And I've not actually even glued that one. You can see it is loose, so I think I will put a little bit of glue on that, but it does hold together reasonably well. So let's put a bit of glue on that, and we'll class that back section as sort of a usable piece again. And we have the remains of the other one, which I will keep because there's some useful bits in there, like the spring and that, and there are other pieces that are broken, so I will just throw those away. But there's enough useful pieces there that it's worth keeping the bulk of it. So a little bit of glue on that, and we'll say that that back section is done. To put the glue on, I've actually taken the metal section off again, because it means that you can sort of rotate everything around a little bit easier. And I'm just going to put glue where we've broken the peg there, and I think that should be enough to hold it. So I'm just using some super glue. I'm going to squirt that onto that peg. That keeps it well away from all of the other moving parts and shouldn't cause any issues, so I can just push those two pieces together. The front section seems to be held pretty firmly, so I'm not going to bother sort of moving that around, but this back section, just a little bit of glue will get everything held firmly. Now that's had time to glue, we might as well test it. So let's just clip on some pieces from another bike, and we'll see if that launching mechanism works, which it does. So there you go, that's a new back section made out of the broken parts of two others. As you can see, it is pretty easy to do, but I just don't do it very often because they seem to be the bit that I have most of, and it doesn't seem sort of worth going to the effort. But I know some people have asked for me to show how to do that, so there we go, that's the back section back and working. The next issue is not one I'd actually seen before, and that's having the little peg broken off that the handlebars attached to. I've got a handlebar here, and you can see that that clips very neatly onto this peg, and that one is snapped, so we're going to have to replace that. And I'm going to use the standard sort of thing that I would always use, my sort of first go-to for any of these fixes, which is a Lego aerial. Now this Lego aerial is slightly too large. You can see it's actually about the same diameter as that little lip there that holds the handlebar in place, but it's close enough. I think actually you can probably clip that on, because this plastic is fairly forgiving, so it does actually clip on. It's pushing the plastic out a little way, but I think that's a good enough starting point. And I'm going to use a black one because I don't actually have any that sort of closely match this sort of browny colour that the top of the bike is made from. But I think if I use black, by the time the handlebar's in place, you'll just see a little black end there, which really shouldn't make much difference to how this looks. So we're going to do a little bit of modifications to this just to make it fit slightly nicer. I've got my needle files here, which are sort of small files, and I'm going to gently file down part of this aerial and make it a little bit thinner. And I'm also going to leave a sort of bit that I can make that little lip on the end there, and then we'll drill a hole in this and insert it in. So I need to make sort of 1.5, well, no, maybe sort of 0.75 of a centimetres worth sort of filed down. So let's just get that started. So here's the file. I'm going to carefully file around and we'll see what we can make. After a small amount of filing, you can see I've ended up with a slightly thinner diameter, a bit of Lego there, and I think that should fit this handlebar a lot better. It does. You can see that fits a lot neater, and it's not stretching the plastic too much. So we can now trim off the end of that and try and shape it just so it looks like that peg there with a little lip at the end. So I've got a pair of plastic nippers here. I'm going to carefully cut off that end like so. And there we go, we've got a tiny little lip there. It's not exactly like the original, but it's close enough. Just give that little file down just to smooth it off. I think that will do. Could be I could even just put a little bit of paint on that just to sort of colour the end of it. But I think I may just leave it as a black. Just a little bit of black on the bike. So let's just do that test one more time. Yeah, that fits on nicely. So now we're going to have to drill a matching hole into this bike front that's the same sort of diameter as that, and then we can glue that in place. So I have my pin vise here, and I've got a little set of drill bits, so I'm just going to find the one that matches that new diameter and we'll drill that in place. I've decided on a 2.5mm drill bit because the original piece of Lego is 3mm, and I've filed a little bit off, and 2.5 should be about right. And all I've got to do is now drill this hole carefully into this broken section and make sure it's all lined up. So I've got my pin vise, we'll just get drilling and drill slowly. Now I was going to glue that peg in, but I've actually just pushed it in place, and it's such a tight fit that I don't think it actually needs any glue at all. It's really gone in very firmly, so that was a sort of good bit of luck there. I sort of guessed the size and it's worked very nicely. You can see it's just a little bit sort of light on the end there. Maybe a little bit of paint on that would help, but for the moment I won't bother. Let's just try the handlebar and see how that works. And there we go. That is back on. That actually looks really nice. I think I'm just going to put a bit of black marker pen on that just to sort of cover over the little light patches that happen when you cut plastic with sort of little stress marks. And I think that will be fine. That's another bike ready to go. Now the next part of this project involves the missing pieces. Now obviously when you're collecting these bikes they are always missing various parts. Normally the flaps at the back are missing, quite often the handlebars are missing, and then the gun is also missing on the bottom. And without those you really don't have a complete bike. Now I do always keep my eyes open for those parts at toy fairs and flea markets, but I don't often find them. I think in my years of collecting I've still only got one original rear flap for a bike. All the others are some things but I've taken off the Power of the Force 2 vehicle. So I was really wondering what to do with this, but a few months back Andy McRae got in touch with me on Facebook and saying that he had been modelling some of these parts and was going to be 3D printing them, and the files that he's modelled are available for free for anyone to use. So originally he got in touch with me to say that he'd made some handlebars, and he's very kindly printed out a few of these, and I actually have a pile of them here. You can see I'll bring a whole load of them in, and these are pretty good recreations of the original handlebars. Now they are slightly sort of fatter, and obviously you can see they are a 3D print, but they do the job and they will make these bikes look great. So I've done a little bit of tidy up on these because the 3D prints have slightly rough edges and need a little bit of filing down, but they do work remarkably well. So as I say, the file for you to print your own of these is available, and I will put a link to all of the different Star Wars bits that Andy has made that you can download those files and print them yourselves. If you don't have a 3D printer, then there are places that will 3D print things for you. I've never used them, I have to say, but there certainly are quite a lot of them out there. So with the handlebars there are two. You have two different sides. You've got a left and a right, and you can see the top section where the hands go are at different positions, and they actually go on the inside. So this bike here is missing one handlebar, so we need a right side handle, which is that one, and this should just clip on like that, and you can see that it's quite hard to tell that they are different. If you hold them up together you can see they're slightly thicker in places, and obviously the 3D print sort of lines are a bit visible, but really they look pretty good. So I'm going to just put these handlebars on all of these bikes, and Andy has made files for all of the other missing pieces, so we're going to be using those as well, and he's also very kindly printed those out for me so we can get those in place. Now you can see that one doesn't fit quite precisely, and that's what I mean. Some of these need a little bit of work. The print is just a little bit too thick on the clip section, so I'm just going to pull in my file here and just file that down just a little bit. It really only needs a smaller, sort of less than a millimetre taken off the inside edge, and then that should clip in place. I think that's the problem when you're printing things at this scale. Minor sort of errors like that sort of seem to magnify and make things just not fit quite right. So you can see those handlebars are looking great. Now let me pull in some of the other bits that Andy has made, and I'll show you those and we can compare them to the originals as well. The lower gun is also another piece that Andy has recreated. You can see these are quite fine prints as well. Now with the gun there is a very weak spot on it, which is the little peg that holds it into the bottom of the speeder bike, and what Andy has done there is actually just inserted a small screw and that should be strong enough to sort of hold it in place. I have to say, if he hadn't done that, then I would have actually inserted a piece of Lego, because the top of a Lego antenna would have done just as sort of good as job. Now again, this file is available for you to download and print yourself. Links will be in the description for all of these. In fact, I'm just going to link straight to Andy's page so you can see every single item that he has ready, because I think he's producing quite a few of them sort of as time goes on. So by the time I finish recording this video there may be more sort of bits available, but today we're just dealing with the speeder bike. So I'm going to take this piece and we can slot it into the very small hole on the bottom of the bike. I'm hoping I can just sort of twist that in And there we go, that's the gun in place. If we hold it up, I've got an original one here so you can just see what the two look like together. Now as you can see, it is slightly thicker and you can see the print lines on it, so if you're worried about people sort of selling these as repros, I think it's fairly easy to spot. But for restoring bikes like this, where these are all in pieces anyway, I'm really pleased with how that looks. That's a really nice sort of finish. So let's put these other guns on the other two bikes that I've got here, and then we can move on to the flaps. For the flaps, Andy's actually sent me some of the prints straight off the print bed, so they have all of the support material and excess bits around, so we can actually sort of get these put together. As you can see, there are little loops there that actually need to be glued onto the bottom side of the flaps, because the end flap will look like this, which is pretty much like the original one. So there's little loops on the bottom that hook onto the bits on the back of the speeder bike. But again, you can clearly see these sort of print lines, so I don't think if you're worried about reproductions, you're not going to be fooled by these, but they will look very nice and make these bikes very displayable. So let's prepare some of these fresh off the printer bed speeder bike flaps, and we'll put them together. As I mentioned, this is how they come straight off the printer bed. So you can see there's a lot of excess printer material here, and that's all the support structure, so we need to carefully remove that from the bottoms of the flaps. Some of it will just break away. You can see you can just pull it off, and I've got a small pair of pliers here. I'm just going to sort of tease my way around the edge, and we'll break off all of this. And we might need a little bit of filing just to tidy it up, but it should come away pretty easily. You can see once you sort of start, it does break off nicely. There you go, that's the bulk of it removed already. And then just with this pair of needle nose pliers, I can remove the smaller bits that have left. And then we need to take off these tiny little loops, and these bits will need to be stuck on either with a bit of super glue or some plastic weld, whichever you have to hand. I think super glue may be easier, but plastic weld would probably produce a stronger bond. So we're going to try both, I think. Now we have the support material removed, we can glue the pieces together. So you've got the two flaps left and right, and then there are two little pieces that need to be glued onto each. There's this thicker little U-shaped piece, and that goes in the middle there, and that's the bit that sort of holds onto the metal portion of the back of the speeder bike. So that needs to be sort of glued on like that. And then there's these tiny little U loops, and those need to be glued on. I don't know if I can just turn this around, onto the sort of side portion of the speeder bike flap, and that hooks onto the plastic bit that moves and sort of moves the flap up and down. So to do this, we are going to use super glue. I think plastic weld does work. I've done one with plastic weld, but it's a little bit more fiddly, so I'm just going to use super glue. So I've got some normal Loctite super glue here. I'm going to drip a bit onto some paper, because you don't want to put too much of this on. It's actually easier if you move the items to the super glue than put the super glue onto where you're gluing. So I've got some tweezers here. We do the big thick piece first, and this only needs gluing at one end. You can see that one end of the U-shape has a little tab sticking out, and that end we need to put some glue on. So dip that on there, and then we can push this in place onto the back of the flap. We'll push that in firmly. It is quite fiddly, as you can see, because these flaps are particularly small, but we can just push that on and the super glue should go off quite quickly, and we'll end up with that. Once that part is glued, we can then do the same with this tiny little loop, and that needs to be glued onto these two little spaces here. So again, I'm just going to use my tweezers to carefully hold that, and then we can drop it into the little drip of super glue I've got there, and we'll push that in place, and we'll just let that go off. And we've got to do that another 4 times, or actually another 8 times, because I've got so many of these to make. You can see once that's glued, you end up with the 2 loops on the back of the flap there. Now that the glue has had time to dry, you can see I can start fitting these onto the back of the bike. So that's the first one fitted on, and it works remarkably well, and it's a very good sort of replacement. They're a little bit more fiddly to sort of put in place, just because I want to be a bit delicate with them, because the 3D prints should be quite strong, but at this scale I do worry a little bit that they may sort of break, so I'm just being a little bit over cautious putting them on and using a pair of tweezers just to sort of guide everything in to the correct hole. But you can see there that does work, and the flaps look great. So that's the next part of the bike done. I think all I want to do now is some custom stickers, because I was never happy with how this bike looked. It looked a little bit plain, so let's design some new stickers for the speed bike. Now, I always thought this speed bike could do with a few sort of stickers adding to it, because it's a fairly plain sort of paint job. They've just got a few little bits of red that they've stuck to the top there, and I actually quite liked what they did with the Power of the Force 2 speeder bike, where they just sort of made up some stickers that you could stick on various points. But again, they didn't really do that many of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Power of the Force 2 stickers as a basis and then make some of my own. Now, I do like battle damage stickers, so I'm going to make some battle damage stickers that can be stuck on the rear section here, and maybe one that can go on the front and another one on this side. But I also think there's space for some little warning stickers here, and I want to make a little control panel sticker. Now, again, I know the original bike didn't have a control panel there, but there's a perfect little gap that we can add something, so I'll make something to go in there. And then also I want to add some shading to this portion of the bike, because it just looks a bit plain. So I've taken some measurements, and all I do is I get a small ruler and I measure sort of the sizes roughly of the stickers I want to make, and I write them down on a bit of paper like this. So you can see here, these are my measurements for various parts. And now I can go into Photoshop and I will start designing them properly and using these measurements as a basis for how big I need to make the stickers. So let's get these stickers designed. After about 45 minutes work in Photoshop, I am left with this, and this is my newly designed stickers. I printed these out onto some clear sticky backed acetate. You can buy various types of sort of sticky back printing papers. I found this acetate is pretty good because it's fairly thin, but you can buy some vinyl stuff as well. So here are the little bits I made. So that's the little fade that's going to go in the exhaust port on the side, and here's some battle damage stickers, and a couple that are sort of based on the ones from the Power of the Force 2 vehicle. So I'm not quite really sure what it was, but I quite like the design of it. And then there's a little warning stripe which I've tidied up as well, and then this little warning sign. The one that was on the Power of the Force 2 bike, actually you could read it said warning, but as we all know, in the Star Wars universe they don't use a English typeface, so I've used the Arabic typeface that you can download and redone those so that it does say warning, but it's in the sort of Star Wars universe language font there. And then there is my little control panel. So I'm going to cut some of these out and I will stick them on one of the speeder bikes and we'll see what it looks like. So I've just got a pair of scissors. I'm going to use my pen knife here because I've got some fairly small scissors on that, and just get cutting and sticking. I've added stickers in different configurations to these two bikes just to show you what sort of thing you can do. So on this one we've got a little sort of warning stripe on the front and a bit of battle damage on this side, and the little control panel sticker there, and then a little warning sign there just at the back, and another bit of battle damage. It just adds a nice little bit of detail. I do like the extra bit of shading that's gone in these vents on the side. I think that really brings those out. Without those it's just a very plain looking toy. And again, this one I've done sort of fairly similar, a bit more battle damage on it, and again I've actually put the different warning stickers on the front there, and those little sort of symbols from the Power of the Force 2 sort of design stickers there. So you can see you can just sort of put stickers on any way you like just to get a little bit of variation on these bikes. And this file that I've created I will put available on toy-polloi.com, so if you want to download it and do the same to your speeder bike, then go there and grab this file. And here are the finished bikes. So from a pile of bits and sort of pieces, I've actually managed to put together 5 complete bikes. So I found another few pieces when I was having a rummage looking for some parts. So there's now 5 of them, and they all work remarkably well and are good enough to go back on display. So I need to say a massive thanks to Andy McRae for taking the time to design the replacement parts and also printing them for me. As I say, there's a link to where you can get those files to print yourself in the description for this video. And if you want to do what I've done and add some custom stickers to your speeder bike, then that file is available from toy-polloi.com. I think it does make a nice addition to the speeder bike and just sort of gives it those extra few little details that I wish Kenner had done sort of back in the day, but the fact they didn't means that I can have a go now and sort of do some improvements, and that's really what I like doing, is just taking an old toy and just adding a few more bits and pieces to it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a bit of an epic one, but as you can see it's been really worth it because I've now ended up with some very nice looking speeder bikes from a pile of parts that I just had lying around, and these can go on display here at Toy-Polloi. So thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy-Polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.